Welcome to another in our great chapters of the Bible. Our chapter today is Genesis chapter 50. Joseph buries Jacob. We'll begin reading in verse 1. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. When the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, I'm about to die. In my tomb that I have hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, let me please go up and bury my father. Then I will return. And Pharaoh answered, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and grievous lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father 7 days. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, This is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians. Therefore the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, which Joseph bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, Please forgive the transgressions of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgressions of the servants of the God of your father. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, Behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the 3rd generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land, to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. Once upon a time, they lived happily ever after. That lacks a certain flair for the dramatic, don't you think? There's no conflict, no danger, no nothing really. Would you read a book knowing ahead of time that it lacked the elements of a good plot? In reality, that's what we would like many times in our life. We want to choose the elements of danger, like a good roller coaster ride, or drama, like watching a thunderstorm roll by in the distance, or conflict, such as a sporting event where our team wins because they're the favorite. We want our days filled with the bland of the predictable. But character is rarely forged in the lap of luxury and ease. It is in the furnace of affliction and struggle and challenge that true character is often developed. I think of it rather like muscle tone. In spite of what those infomercials tell us, getting in shape is not easy, and 5 minutes a day doesn't give us those ripped features they so often show us by their models in the ads. We're told in chapter 47, verse 27 of Genesis that Jacob lived to be 147 years old. And he told Pharaoh that he was 130 years old when he met him, having come to Egypt in chapter 47, verse 9. The math tells us that he lived 17 years in Egypt. So Joseph spent the first 17 years of his life with his father and the last 17 years of his father's life with him. The middle 22 years between ages 17 and 39 are what are the utmost concern, as the brothers once and for all had to settle accounts, so to speak. Jacob's life had been a hard one, for so he describes it to Pharaoh in Genesis 47:9. Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage." From the day he came out of the womb, clutching his brother's heel, it seems as though life had dealt him a harsh hand. But I wouldn't be so quick to characterize his life always that way. You and I have that luxury, not having endured what he did. We see the outcome in the big picture. The writer of the book of Hebrews mentions Jacob among the great ones of faith in Hebrews 11:20 and 21. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph and worshiped, leaning on the top of his staff. Stephen mentions Jacob in passing when he recounts the history of the patriarchs to the Jewish council at the close of his life. He describes it thus in Acts 7:14 through 15. Then Joseph sent and called his father Jacob and all his relatives to him, 75 people. So Jacob went down to Egypt, and he died, he and our fathers. Nearly all of the last half of Genesis is within the lifetime of Jacob. With the close of Genesis comes the close of Jacob's life and his burial. Yet there is unfinished business. Joseph's 10 brothers who conspired against him some 39 years earlier are finally, once and for all, having to deal with that situation that has long loomed in the background. The great procession that went up to Canaan has now returned, and with it the realization of unfinished business that must be resolved. The brothers still operate in the revenge mode, thinking that this is the way of all the world. Well, that might be a reasonable assumption, but it is far from where Joseph is. If we peer closely into the life of Joseph, we see a type of Christ. You remember a type in the Old Testament was a shadow of what was coming in the New Testament in Christ. Some of the shadows we find in the Old Testament are talking about the bronze serpent in Numbers 21:8 and Christ in John 3:14, or the Egyptian bondage of the Old Testament and that of the slaves to sin in the New Testament, and the manna from heaven in Exodus 16 and Christ, the true bread, in John 6:32. As it pertains to the type and antitype of Joseph and Jesus, we find that both Joseph and Jesus were despised. Both went down to Egypt. Both were falsely accused and arrested. Both resisted temptation to sin. Both were sold. Both showed compassion and showed pardon to those who did them wrong, among other things they shared in common. Joseph had already revealed, in spite of their wicked scheme, that it was God who sent him there in Genesis 45:5. Now again, Joseph must point out the bigger picture to them, one based on mercy and not revenge, one based on forgiveness and not bitterness. How astounding it must have been when they threw themselves at Joseph's feet and offered themselves as mere servants, and then to hear Joseph's reply in Genesis chapter 50, verses 19 through 21. But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today. So do not fear, for I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Does that sound familiar? Take a look in the Gospel of Luke at the Father's reaction to the return of the prodigal son, who himself offered his life as a servant to his Father. One wonders how many times we must read these accounts that reveal the great truths of God's mercy and kindness before we grasp how great His love is for us and the lengths with which He was and is willing to go to secure our place with Him in eternity. And as we close, think about this. How has this story of Joseph's journey affected you? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow and look at another of the great chapters of the Bible.